Sure.
Yeah, share please, Brian. All right, we're live with another Friday Wi-Fi video cast. How you doing, Brian?
It's Friday.
It's Friday.
Super early.
I got my robot lawnmower out there connected to the Wi-Fi, cutting the grass for me, so I can spend extra time
That's awesome. Yeah.
working.
The first time I ran into that was at a show, and the guy showed me a video or like where the lawnmower was going.
Yeah,
I thought that was the coolest thing.
it's no
But
joke.
in California, we don't have grass to cut, so
We do here, and that thing's on. I had to make sure my Wi-Fi is strong outside for that thing. So, all right. So today we're going to talk about a few different things. First of all, talk a little bit about live streaming. So, with the pandemic, a lot of organizations have been live streaming, whether it be churches or schools, and they're setting up remote live streams, and that puts like a certain requirement on the network, right?
yeah.
So basically, all of a sudden these networks that weren't being used for anything like this before are getting an additional load with all this live stream traffic, which is RTMP mostly, and that's kind of like it's encoding the video in HTTP packets, so it's using TCP in most cases. That's what we're using right now. That we're shooting up to YouTube Live, using OBS Studio to encode the video, and it uses a lot of traffic. Now, what these schools and churches are doing, they're actually having multiple camera devices contact a streaming server. Maybe it's in AWS Cloud, and it's combining all these video sources and uploading the video to Facebook or YouTube or what have you, and that's putting a lot of extra requirements on the network. We're starting to see people asking about it or people doing it, right?
Yeah, specifically in House of Worship, we're seeing it more and more now because they're always live streaming. So we see that obviously there's a ton of people doing like influencer activities on YouTube and things like that. So that is happening there as well.
Yeah, a lot of these big time video casters are using the same sort of stuff. They're encoding live. They're pushing the stuff out from their networks, and it can be pretty taxing on the network, on the switching infrastructure in particular, right? So the switches are gonna have to handle a lot more traffic going all over the place from all these devices.
Right. Did you want to bring up or talk about like the UDP, TCP, and HTTP?
Yeah. Just quickly. I mean, we're not experts on RTMP streaming. We're quickly becoming experts. We'll probably know more about it in the coming weeks.
Yeah.
But the basically difference is with TCP is a guaranteed protocol. So it'll just keep retrying, right? If it's a lossless protocol, so it'll keep retrying. You may see like the quality of the video go down, but it's not going to drop any packets, right? That has more overhead on the network using HTTP protocol, whereas UDP is just kind of like blasting video out there, and if it gets there, great. It's best effort delivery. So that doesn't have as much requirements because it's not, it's basically just. It's just streaming that video out there. If you get it, great. It may drop a few frames here and there, but it's going to give you, UDP will give you the best performance for the network that you have right now. If the network degrades, then you may lose some packets, but you're going to get the clearest picture, best audio, all that if you're using UDP, usually because it's not worrying about delivering every single packet.
Right.
So anyway, that's just a requirement we're seeing coming online. So another great reason that you're going to need good Wi-Fi and switching in particular, and we'll touch on that again in the coming weeks. So we want to talk about a couple other things. So what next? What about Facebook Wi-Fi 2, Brian? Like this is a new basically onboarding network on Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Onboarding method.
Yeah, that's another way for businesses to be able to offer, pretty much everybody's offering free Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Like that's been the trend for a long time now. That's a almost an essential thing when you're going to like a coffee house or something like that, like a small business. And so I guess Facebook has Facebook Wi-Fi. And what that is it's basically it allows you to onboard your customers using their Facebook not credentials, I guess, but like when you log in, you're going into the business's Wi-Fi, and it's allowing you on via that method basically.
Yeah, it's basically gonna push you out to the business's Wi-Fi page, and the business will get like some information on you too, like oh, this user was on our network. So in exchange for that, you're getting free Wi-Fi, right? So
right.
It's a way for them to collect some marketing data and give you the free Wi-Fi. I mean, no one really wants to pay for Wi-Fi anymore. Only like the high-end hotels and airliners charge for it right now, right? Like other than that, you're pretty much free everywhere. So the businesses want to try to recoup something like some sort of marketing.
At minimum, the person logging in using Facebook Wi-Fi is checking in at that place.
Yes.
And so their followers or their friends see that they've checked in this particular business. So that's a great marketing tool for business, for example. So right now it's Facebook Wi-Fi 1.0, I think, and 2.0. We'll see if that launches. We'll see what happens with that.
Yeah. I mean, social login's been around for a while, but this is like something new. This is going to actually center around you need to have a business Facebook page set up to use this. You can't just social login before. Basically, it just have you log in your Facebook page and then let you in. This is a little bit different, where it's kind of pushing you to the business's page and having you like that so that they capture that information.
In there,
check in at the business. Yeah, so that's kind of cool, and that's coming out in the new Ingenious Cloud soon. Sometime, eventually.
Yeah. I mean, there's only talks of Facebook Wi-Fi 2.0.
Yeah.
There's really no plans out there for that yet.
Okay.
It's kind of been talked about and things like that, but other than that, I don't know too much about it.
Okay. All right. So then another thing we want to talk about is Wi-Fi and networking for surveillance. So that's a big network use of IP surveillance cameras, right?
Oh yeah, that's something that we've seen over the years. I mean, we've always seen this for the last 6 years.
Yeah, at least.
But it's been more for us. It's been more wireless communication
point to
from
point.
One point to another point.
Yeah.
Say for example, you want a surveillance camera out in a parking lot. How do you connect that device out in the parking lot to your internal network? And you can do that through point-to-point or bridging, wireless bridging. That we talked about this weeks ago, probably.
Yeah.
But that was the typical. That's a lot of the conversations that we were having with the different system integrators and surveillance customers that we've been working with. But more so now, it's more on the switching side. Specifically for us, it's the cloud switching. There's a couple new switches out right now that we're offering that has some special features tied to surveillance. But the main thing with cloud switches is obviously the remote access to the switch.
Mm-hmm.
You have an interface that you can look at an actual switch, a picture of a switch, and you can see all the ports. You can see if the ports are up or down. You can see if they're linked at the correct speeds. You can reboot the ports. So those are all kind of essential things. And then one important thing that a lot of people don't really talk about that I discovered just working with different surveillance companies is the alert system, and being able to see alerts when a port goes down. And you can see those alerts either through a phone app, through an email, or through our cloud interface. You can see those alerts. So that's been kind of the buy-in from the surveillance companies
Yeah.
into our solution, and we just now launched, and you probably talked to this as well. Uh, three new features, which is one is PO extended mode, which offers up to 250 meters of PoE. So the traditional is 100 meters. Now we're saying you can go as far as 250 meters or
Nice.
328 feet all the way out to 900 feet or close to 900 feet. You can extend that power to like a surveillance camera at longer distances.
Is that
The
is
other
that full
thing,
power? Is that AT or AF or what is that?
no, that's. I'm glad you brought that up. It depends on the model. So on the 24 port switch that we have that it does extended mode, you can see up to 18 watts of power.
18 watts. Okay, so it is pretty much it's AF but a little bit more maybe.
Yeah, and then oh, excuse me, it's 20 watts. It's
20
20
watts.
watts.
So it's still
Yeah,
between the two. It's
it is.
and
Yeah.
these cameras use pretty small amounts of power from what we can
Yeah, we
see.
don't really see high power usage. I mean, even with our like some of our higher output power kind of access points,
Yeah.
top like we typically publish the peak performance, which
Yeah.
is about 22 watts,
Right.
23 watts. That's peak. That means that the access point has a lot of clients connected to it. Both bands are running. It's doing a lot of work to be able
Yeah.
to pull that power. The output power is turned up all the way to like 28 dBm and so on. So it just really depends. Now on the 48 port, the 48 port's 20 watts. The 24 port is 18 watts.
Okay. Gotcha.
Make sure I state that correctly.
And that's plenty for most IP cameras again because these
Yeah.
things only maybe use like 5 watts or something like that at the most. So you're able to extend that Ethernet out. Now, okay, so let me think about that for a second though. But the Ethernet range, the standard for Ethernet range is 100 meters also. So how does that work out? Do you have to put
Yeah,
something
so
else in
100.
between?
Yeah, so you're maxed out on Ethernet at 328
Feet.
feet or
Yeah.
100 meters, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens beyond that point, and that's what we were just kind of talking about. So up to 328 feet, you can offer either 15 watts or 15.4 watts,
Yeah.
30 watts of power or 60 watts of power or 100 watts of power. It really depends on your PoE switch and what it can do or what standards it follows. We follow PoE, PoE plus, and PoE plus plus. But when you go beyond that 250 or 100 meters, that's when the power and the communication changes, right? So now we can offer up to 18 or 20 watts of power. The speed actually comes down to about 10 megabits per second. So
Ah.
your speed comes down
Okay.
after that 328 feet.
Gotcha. So yeah, and that's fine for most of these IP cameras because, I mean, one that's doing full HD 1080p maybe uses like a megabit, for one camera. I've got a
Yeah.
bunch of these things running. I watch them, and they're using UDP again, and they don't use much traffic. So 10 meg is really fine as long as it's a good connection. It's way better. I'd rather have, a 200 meter long Ethernet than having to wirelessly bridge if possible, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're going wired versus wireless.
Yeah.
We've done a ton of point-to-point wireless, but yeah, you typically want to wire these things. That's normally the best method, and I'm glad we're talking about that because you definitely do not want to put an access point at 250 meters.
No, we've seen some
Um,
of the, let's call them, lesser manufacturers like coming up with these like PoE standards where they try to use like, let's say 12 volt PoE injector, and
Yeah.
then people end up extending that out. Maybe that 12 volt is good for maybe 50 feet or something, but they'll try to extend it out over the
It's
300
150
feet.
feet, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the it's physics. The longer that cable is, the more power is going to drop
Right,
over
exactly,
distance. So that, you got to make sure, if that access point's expecting 12 volts and it's getting like 3, it's going to have a problem. Like it's going to heat up or not work right.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And I'm talking
Yeah,
about
really-
like, manufacturer standard, not a standard, just like some manufacturer's own implementation.
Yeah, the issue is really not only is it not working, but when when you experience it from an end user standpoint or like a system integrator standpoint,
Mm.
it's an intermittent issue.
Yeah, it's frustrating because they can't really
It's
pinpoint
very
it.
frustrating.
Yeah.
So if you will put together that your cable is too long,
Mm-hmm.
or you're using the wrong PoE device to power it up, you're kind of like, oh well, it's the speeds are slow.
Yeah.
That could be the issue. And you're like, well, why are their speeds so low? Is it the internet service provider? Is it the way it's set up? Is the Wi-Fi bad? You're troubleshooting Wi-Fi. You're troubleshooting all these things.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, you run into a long series of troubleshooting in some cases. Some people know better, but we've ran into that. Actually, we ran into that probably like 2 or 3 weeks ago, where somebody was going over 100 meters or
Yeah.
over 128 feet, and they were seeing like packet loss or something weird like that. And so we finally said, okay, what's the cable length? So sometimes you get it right away, sometimes you don't get it right away, and you're kind of spending time troubleshooting with somebody, and you finally go, oh, it's the cable length. It's
Yeah.
the problem. So
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, all those things are important, but yeah, those new switch features are gonna be great for anyone that's doing IP surveillance cameras. It's gonna let you put more cameras on the switch and monitor them better. Now, there's another feature that we wanted to talk about was continuous PoE. Continuous PoE. What's that, Brian? Sorry, Jessica's going nuts now. I think we have a visitor.
Yeah, so switches. You have to maintain your switches. You have to maintain the firmwares, right? So
Yeah.
With cloud, you're scheduling and automatically updating the firmware. So typically, when you do a firmware update, you have to do a reboot. And if you do a reboot, you're disrupting kind of the device that you're powering up at the end. So with continuous PoE, that doesn't happen. So what happens is it goes through a firmware reboot and it goes through a power cycle. However, it continues to feed power to like a surveillance camera, for example.
Yeah.
So continuous PoE power is another feature that we added within some of our switches that we offer.
Yeah, you don't want your surveillance camera to go down because you're doing a firmware update, like
Yeah.
in the middle of the day or something by emergency, right? So that's a great feature where that PoE doesn't go to it stays continuous even throughout the reboot. And what about another feature great for them? I know you hit on it a little bit, is that you can remotely restart the cameras by just by hovering on the port, right? And like you can reset PoE.
Yeah. So there's a couple things around that. So we have PD Lifeguard, right, which is Power Device Lifeguard, which basically acts like a watchdog, where it communicates with the power device to make sure it's up.
Mm-hmm.
So it continuously does that over time, and if it does not get a response, it will reboot that port.
Yeah, automatically. So it's pinging that camera device, and if it doesn't get a response in a certain amount of time, it's gonna bring the power down that port and bring it back up.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
And then we also built in the ability to schedule PoE, so you can actually turn off per port. You can turn off the PoE of the port on a schedule. So
That's
you can build
nice.
that schedule into in your different environments or the different installations that you go into.
Oh,
So
that's
you can
nice.
actually schedule that out if you need to. So if you don't want devices on a Sunday, for example, or during work hours, you don't need it up, then you can turn those things off if you want to by scheduling the PoE. So you can say, okay, on Sunday on port 3, I do not want PoE to be on during this time.
And
The other thing that you can do is we integrated the ability to basically run your mouse over the port of the switch, and it will allow you to select, you just hover over the port, and it will allow you to reset the port real time or on demand, basically, I should say.
nice.
You can also schedule the resets, the PoE resets. So if you don't want to turn off PoE altogether, you can schedule it to power or reset the port at particular time. So you have that ability. So you can choose any port. If you have an 8 port, you can choose like port 6, for example, or if you have a 24 port or a 48 port, you can choose whatever port that you need to power cycle.
Nice. So let's say you had some access points and you wanted to guarantee that Wi-Fi is going to be off. Now, a lot of times you can do it within the interface To set you can schedule the Wi-Fi from within the cloud, say on a Genius.
Yeah.
But if someone didn't, maybe they left an access point out of that configuration or something, and all of a sudden one's still up, right? If you cut the power on the PoE switches, then you're sure that those access points aren't broadcasting, and you're not using as much power either. You're saving some power if you're not, why have that thing up and running, right? Wear and tear on the access points. And another thing I could think about is if, let's say, you had multiple manufacturers, like you had different access points from different manufacturers in there, and you weren't sure that they're all configured exactly the same. That by cutting that PoE power on the schedule, you can make sure all those devices are up at the same time.
Yeah, one of the that you just brought up a really good point. I just thought about. So one of the biggest, kind of doing some research and things like that. One of the biggest things that uses a lot of power is light.
Lights. Yeah.
So you can actually schedule those, and they can be powered by PoE.
Right.
So you can actually schedule when those lights are on or off, and you can cut the power via the port of the switch. So that's just a huge cost savings, because that's the biggest cost within a company is the lighting.
Oh yeah, and then it's all integrated into the cloud software, so they can control those lights. And let's say IP phones, maybe they don't want those things on, over the weekend, so no one's coming in there making calls. All right, they want a certain schedule on the phones. They could shut those things down too.
Right. Yep.
So yeah, that's going to be a useful feature. All right, anything else we want to talk about today?
No, I think
that's it. We got it. That was a lot of stuff to cover. If anyone has any questions about any of these topics, post below, and we'll revisit the live streaming requirements on the switches soon, because we're seeing more and more of this and getting more and more questions about it. All right, well, remember to like and subscribe for more help with Wi-Fi, and we'll see you next week.